Are you trying to make this a challenge? Holy hiccup.
Hey guys, if you want our help in setting up a personalized meal plan or a personalized training program, or both, we can actually do that online for you on our platform and get that done through website, Robin.
Yep. So jump on www.lntonline.co.nz, sign up. We'll have the questionnaire, fill that out. We'll take care of the rest.
Awesome.
Yeah, we get some people fasting for 20 hours and trying to lift heavy, and they're like, why? Robin, why can I not push this 2 kg over my head? Robin, help.
Robin. Marvin, spot me on these 2 kg bench press. I need the help. I haven't eaten.
My last meal was 2 days ago. Welcome. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the LNT podcast. It's a lifestyle where we try to educate you in a lighthearted manner about science, nutrition, training, and everything in between.
Anything that keeps you moving.
Anything. We try to anyway. We try our best.
I'm just glad to be back.
Yeah, Robin's been away. He's been on
sabbatical leave. I was on holiday. And the way I got around this was I basically blew my back disc basically straight out during deadlifts. But
right on time when we did a podcast on optimizing strength training.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. So
but
just
good to be back. I can sit now. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
So I believe I've come out of my hospital bed here to talk about fasting.
We will be talking about fasting. It is a common topic. A lot of people ask us about fasting and what we think about it and what the evidence suggests about fasting. So we'll be talking interchangeably about fasting as well as calorie restriction, or having what that basically means is having less calories than what your maintenance is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fasting, in simple terms, it's just the abstention of food or lack of food, or eating less food than or no food.
I like the caveman style.
Yeah.
Just don't eat.
Don't eat. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, you're correct. Just abstain from food.
Yeah, abstaining from food and sometimes drink as well. Depending, there's so many different types of fasts nowadays, especially. Everyone comes up with a new one and says this works better. But we'll be talking about what that is, and we'll be describing what fasting is, how it came about. It's been going on for years and years and years. And then after that, we'll be talking about the benefits that there are, with fasting. And there's a few. There are definitely a number of benefits and some glaring evidence that shows that there are some, good benefits to do.
There's always pros and cons, eh?
Absolutely.
I guess it all comes back to keeping in mind that Marv and I harp on about your goals.
Yeah.
So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, keep that in mind, that fasting is a approach to reach a specific goal. So keep that in mind, as we're talking about this.
Absolutely. And once we have talked about the different types of fasting and the benefits of fasting, we will talk about whether they're contraindications or particular things to bear in mind if you are thinking of doing fasting, whether it's prolonged fasting or short term. We will talk about that for a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. Okay.
Yep.
So hopefully you get a good take-home message about fasting today.
Yep.
And everything around that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you said before, fasting's been around for quite a long time.
Absolutely.
And we actually work with a guy that does fasting intermittently. So how long do you reckon fasting stemmed back to or where does it come from?
Man, it's been for such a long time, whether it's done on purpose by humans or like by choice or not by choice, simply because of the absence of food. And you're getting close to it's just the environment you live in. There's a lack of food in the area. You're going to be obviously fasting for sometimes, or different religions you see, like in Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, Hinduism. There's forms of fasting. We look at Islam. We're coming into Ramadan now, which is a month where they simply don't eat anything from break of light until sunset. So from sunrise to sunset, no food or drink at all. And there's so many different religions and different forms of fasting linked with religion as almost like sacrifice or whatever.
It's a spiritual cleansing, right?
Yeah, it's a spiritual cleansing, but it basically, with those sorts of fastings, it gave scientists and people an opportunity to find out more about it, and if it does have any benefits beyond this spiritual realm, and more towards the physical and mental realm as well. And so even going back into ancient Greeks and Romans, and Hippocrates used to fast on purpose as a way of healing the body, which was, I'm sure, anecdotal data for him at the time, but some people generally anecdotally feel a lot better going through periods of fasting or restricted calories.
And that's the thing. There's so many different types
Absolutely.
of fast, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Well, while we're on the topic, question, before we actually get into the different types of fast, have you tried fasting? And if you have, what type of fasting did you do, and how did you feel?
Yeah. So I have tried fasting, not for a chronic amount of time. I've tried it periodically, and I've moved in and out of fasting, and it's usually been some form of intermittent fasting, which is a very, very common. And most of the research nowadays is done on intermittent fasting. And what that basically means is going through picking a specific time frame. If it's a day, for example, there is a specific time or a window where you're going to get all your food in, and then you're going to be fasting for the rest of the time. Common patterns is 16-8, where you are fasting for 16 hours a day, and then you have an 8-hour window to get your food in. And your nutrients in. And I've done something similar to that.
I'm glad you said nutrients.
Yeah.
The reason why is that we've worked obviously with people that think that is a time frame to eat whatever they want and as much of it. So Marvin said nutrient dense food. So keep that in mind when you are doing your sort of intermittent fasting or time restricted eating.
Absolutely.
That's what you're aiming for. Don't go out, get pizza, McDonald's.
If you wanted to reap the rewards of fasting, you're definitely not going to go towards those food types. But it goes to a lot more extremes. There is time restricted eating, which is a form of what I've practiced, which is 16-8 is what I've done before. How I felt, it was good. It's a good question. I did feel, and sometimes, especially in the mornings, I felt a lot more energetic if I didn't, have a big breakfast immediately. Sometimes having a massive breakfast does make me feel, for at least a period of time, a little bit sleepier and more lethargic. And there is a little bit of evidence to do with that. If you're having a very rich lunch, dinner, or breakfast, you're going to naturally feel a little bit more sluggish and sleepy for the first couple of hours. So not having that, I felt a lot better, and I was functioning a lot better in the sleeping department. But also brain function, I felt was quite good. In terms of training, that's where it was a little bit, if I was fasted too much and I was doing some high intensity training or heavy workouts and stuff, sometimes I'd start off energetic and I'd start off really good, and you'd fade away within 30, 40 minutes, and sometimes feeling a little bit more sluggish. I'll lose concentration. And then I'll feel a lot hungrier afterwards. So training, which we'll talk about a little bit in terms of contraindications in terms of that, but it can be a little bit of a nuisance when it comes to training. Not in the energy levels, of course, and performance within training.
Yeah.
Have you done fasting before?
Yeah, similar to you, time restricted fasting. I have done not a traditional 5 and 2. So basically that's where you would eat a certain amount of calories over the 5 days and potentially 2 days of very restrictive, like extremely low.
Around 400 to 600
very,
calories.
Very low or next to nothing.
For that day.
And the reason I did it was basically for the 40-hour famine. So close enough to the 2 days.
Yeah.
I did, I guess you could say, cheat because I was having barley sugar lollies for energy. However, with the intermittent fasting, I guess because of the ketones as a release for the cognition, that was okay. But same as for the training, the same experience you had, poor training outcomes for me personally. And I guess for me, that was quite detrimental to more wanting to get stronger. Yeah. More for sports. But I have done it when I've had to cut for a jiu-jitsu competition. Intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, and that worked really, really well because I wasn't focused so much on the strength where I had the positive effects where I know we'll go into detail later, but my endurance capacity, like cardiovascular capacity, actually increased and fat did decrease, and then so that was a benefit. So I've had 2 different outcomes where strength went down, cardiovascular fitness for my sport went up.
That's interesting. So it could be for in terms of cardio, respiratory sports, or long distance runners, it might be somewhat of a benefit.
Yep.
That's
and
awesome.
The strength side, that depleted quite significantly because I had some old numbers that I was comparing to. So I couldn't quite reach those numbers and I couldn't progress really well. And Marvin and I have spoken about this before, that in order to get stronger, you need to lift more over time.
That's exactly it.
I couldn't do it off fasting.
And it is difficult, and even processes of metabolism in terms of ATP synthesis and things like that. If we're getting, which is the energy currency in our bodies, that can slow down, and that becomes affected obviously when there's no nutrients to feed that system. And so metabolism, which we'll talk about later, does have an effect. It adapts to what we're eating.
Yeah, but you and I I guess our sports are quite similar in terms of, with your football season, playing at the elite level, you find that you've got to have more cardiovascular health, right? So your heart health, you've got to take in consideration. So I guess for you, there'll be some benefit even now, potentially incorporating fasting back into your current regime.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned 5-2 diet. For those people who are not aware, we covered it briefly, which is 5 days of 2 days you're eating pretty much little to nothing, which is, and those days, guys, are not consecutive days. There's a break. You don't have 5 days you're eating and then those 2 days are back to back. You have them in between those 5 days. So that's important to mention, I think. And there's also alternate day fasting, which is another form of intermittent fasting as well, which is you eat one day, 24-hour window, and then the other 24-hour window you eat nothing at all. Or very, very little. So there are so many different types. There's a warrior diet. There's so many fancy ones now. I was looking into it and I was like, you can get into a rabbit hole here and we'll be describing different diets all the time. The whole concept about them is the abstention of food or drink, okay? And most of the research done actually looks at, most of the time it's intermittent fasting or some form of intermittent fasting and or calorie restriction, because the bodily processes and what happens to on a cellular level when it comes to fasting or calorie restriction, it's quite similar. So we're looking at the benefits of both either fasting or calorie restriction. Okay, and the main benefit, or one of the benefits, is to do with cardiovascular health or heart health. So many studies have been done on this, and we can look at it through so many different angles. A lot of studies have been done on fasting mice and monkeys, specifically rhesus monkeys, and they have seen an improved performance of the left ventricle, which is the ventricle that pumps blood to the body, to the rest of the body, oxygenated blood. And also the recovery, there is an increased or improved recovery of blood pressure and heart rate directly after exercise or even beyond the exercise. So just the body markers for heart rate and blood pressure are improved whenever you are fasting or experiencing some fasting.
Probably gives a chance for the sort of liver and the kidneys to start flushing out like toxicity within the blood itself and maybe potentially thinning it from doing that fast.
Absolutely.
Which therefore allow that cardiovascular response to optimize its basically heart health.
Exactly. And furthermore, there's been evidence with increasing insulin sensitivity. And obviously we know with insulin sensitivity, you have reduced risk of diabetes and obesity. Both of them obviously have a huge effect on our hearts, okay? So on heart health. So, and most of that is to do with every time you eat, specifically an unhealthy diet or a diet that is rich in sugars or processed carbohydrates, you are gonna cause an insulin spike in your system, okay? There is evidence that if you are constantly causing those insulin spikes within our bodies throughout the day, without giving it much break, you are developing insulin tolerance and or leading or helping out in terms of the processes that lead to insulin tolerance, and which leads to diabetes, obesity, and a number of other
health concerns,
health conditions. Yeah. So really, if you are having a window of 8 hours where you're having all your food in, you're limiting those insulin spikes and obviously helping or aiding insulin sensitivity, which is a good thing. Yeah. I've also got some notes in terms of TNF alpha, or tumor necrotic factor alpha, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. Basically, it causes inflammation in simple terms. And there's so many different pro-inflammatory cytokines that can lead to inflammation. Tumor necrotic factor alpha is just one of them. And what that basically does is increases the risk of inflammation and oxidative stress, which in hand increases the risk of diseases or conditions like atherosclerosis. What that basically is narrowing or building of fibrotic plaques within your arteries or blood vessels, and thinking about the main coronary arteries of the heart. If you've got any blockages or narrowing of those blood vessels and reduced oxygenation to those vital organs, there's going to be huge consequences. Okay, so by fasting, it can lead to reduced oxidative stress, which is a reduction in free radicals within your system, and reduced risk of atherosclerosis and any other inflammatory based diseases, which is almost every single disease or condition out there.
So potentially it's improving heart health.
Yeah.
And to the point, maybe if people have like, let's just say chronic joint pain, potentially sporadic fasting over a year cycle may also help decrease the inflammatory processes that's occurring in the body.
100%. And then there's so much studies done on inflammation in general. Inflammation can occur within any cells around the body. It can happen in the brain, which we'll talk about the benefits of fasting to the brain as well. It can happen in the heart. Of course, with atherosclerosis, sometimes the narrowing and the plaque, the fibrotic plaque can break. The cap can break and form what we call an embolus, which travels around and it can move and get lodged in the brain on one of the main arteries that supply the brain, causing a ischemic stroke. So it just shows you what inflammation can lead to. And this is just to do with the epithelial lining of the arteries, and it can happen to so many other cells around the body. That's important to note.
I'm not going to eat for the rest of today.
That's why we're on the waters today. The other thing in terms of heart health is the basically the health markers of health in terms of heart health. We look at high density lipoprotein, as well as low density lipoprotein. High density is is the good cholesterol. Low density is the bad. And when we're fasting, there is a bit of a transition in that ratio where there's an increase of high density lipoprotein and a reduction of low density, and obviously an overall reduction of fat or adipose tissue. All that you don't want any of that fat in the lining of your arteries and for the heart. To maintain good health. So super important and valuable, I guess, insight to have on heart health and fasting.
Yep.
Yeah. And more reason for you to keep fasting for the rest of the day. Yeah, what else? We've talked about, covered anything else you got around the heart and overall heart health?
No, I think just from like our own subjective outcomes, and then also what the literature is indicating, that if you are experiencing or have, from your GP has indicated that you may need to potentially lose weight or lose fat to help with heart health, that intermittent fasting may be a way forward. That's easy for people to do and can be done starting instantly.
Absolutely. Yeah. That or calorie restriction. So we don't have to narrow it down to fasting itself. If you're doing a calorie restriction, say your maintenance is 3,000 calories per day to maintain your body weight, you eat 3,000 and it stays there. If you drop it to 2,750, for example, and constantly and stay on that for a prolonged amount of time, those biomarkers are going to change also. You are going to reap those benefits similar to fasting. And there has been research to suggest that. Majority of research I looked into looked at them one next to the other. They said calorie restriction or intermittent fasting or any type of fasting. The idea, I think, is with intermittent fasting, within an 8 hour, there's only so much you can eat and you feel quite full. So you're squeezing your calories in there, you feel quite full, and then all of a sudden that window's closed again.
Yep.
You don't want to eat anymore.
Yep.
And chances are you've restricted your calories.
Yep.
For that given day.
Yep.
We touched upon the heart. There's also evidence in terms of fasting or calorie restriction being protective against cancer and cancer in general, which I think is very, very interesting. And a lot of it is to do with inflammation and reduced oxidative stress, which we know happens with fasting. But there are certain proteins or groups of proteins that become active or become suppressed. For example, the suppression of mTOR, as well as the tumor necrotic factor alpha, TNF alpha, which we'll cover and talk about mTOR a little bit later and what that does and how that affects inflammation and other bodily systems that help promote good health. So, definitely. And we see it in a lot of centenarians, people who are very clean. Centenarians are
Centurions.
Centenarians, especially different all over the globe. But we look at Okinawa centenarians and look at their health markers, and they are able to stay away from heart disease, keep away from so many different types of cancers, and outlive everyone else, and go well beyond 100. And that's really, really interesting. And a lot of studies have been done on those groups and seeing why. And a lot of the times you look at their diets, they actually have what we call chronic calorie restriction of 10 to 15%. And they've been doing that for years and years and years. Okay,
it's almost a culture, eh?
It is, yeah. And it's just the way they eat, the way they live, I guess. And it's very interesting.
That's on the money, though. The way they live. The way they live.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
so it also obviously depends on what types of food they're eating and physical activity and everything in between. So we can't narrow it down to one thing, like anything we talk about.
Yeah.
If you're fasting perfectly and sleeping 2 hours a day, and and being stressed up till your neck, you're not going to be living very long.
No, you're still going to have heart failure.
Yeah, but
Your body's not going to be able to do
something's
repair.
going to take you down.
The body's not going to repair from that damage.
Moving on from cancer, going into brain function, and there's a lot of evidence to show that fasting can improve mental clarity, can improve cognition. When we talk about cognition, specifically memory and learning, and the regions of the brain that promote or are focused on learning and memory improved. And that's done. That's quite good evidence on that. And specifically done, we talked about, I think we've covered BDNF before, which stands for. What does it stand for?
Something neurofactor.
Neurotrophic factor. A brain-derived neurotrophic factor. There you go. I had a brain freeze there. I need to fast more often.
No ketones.
But brain-derived neurotrophic factor basically promotes overall brain health, specifically the brain regions associated with memory and learning. Most of the studies have been done on the hippocampus, which is a critical region for that. And fasting has been seen to promote that. The same with exercise. Exercise promotes the increase of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, but fasting does that also. I think it's a way of, which we'll cover in a bit, it's about a way of stressing the brain or adding that stress. Having calorie restrictions causes that bit of a stress to the brain, which promotes the production of BDNF or the increase of BDNF in our brains.
I reckon there's a lot of people that's going to argue against your point just now.
About that being...
Because when they're so hungry,
yeah,
all they're doing is just thinking about food.
At least they're thinking.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, but really interesting to think about that. And furthermore, not only brain-derived neurotrophic factor, but when they look at the neurons of the hippocampus, they, with fasting or with populations that practice calorie restriction or fasting, like the Okinawa people, those neurons are better kept because the neurons of the body through age degenerate bit by bit as we progress with age. But looking at those older populations, the neurons are preserved a lot better and are well kept. And you see that within all over the body, not just the brain, but it just shows you that brain function, you remain functioning highly at even older age, which makes you think about things, whether there is an effect of fasting on Alzheimer's and other age-related cognitive conditions.
You'll probably find the sort of neuropathic systemic inflammation is probably decreasing in that brain cortex as well, which is most likely sustaining better neurosynapses and cognition.
Absolutely.
Potentially from the whole fasting cycle.
Preserving them, keeping them healthier and functioning for longer. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So the heart, the main organs, the heart, the brain.
Heart and brain.
Yeah, huge benefits to reap from calorie restriction or fasting.
Yeah.
The most amount of research when I researched about fasting or calorie restriction was longevity, and being able to live longer and for better, and being able to function a lot better. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I just want to live. You know, I don't want to live till I'm 100 and I'm a potato and not functioning very well." I like to rephrase that to people. I would say, imagine you are 90 years old and you're functioning like a 70-year-old. Okay, so think about adding years to the middle of your life, not to the end of your life. Think about it that way. Don't think about, I don't want to live for long because I don't want to have those, be cognitively unable to function properly.
Yep.
You know, so eating well and looking after your body and loving your body has huge benefits, and for you to be able to function and enjoy life at those older ages. So really, really important. But yeah, we mentioned the Japanese Okinawa being at 10 to 15% calorie restriction
Constantly.
forever.
Yeah, it's a bit.
which is interesting, and that's not just the population that research has been done, and it's not only done on people. Studies have initially were done obviously on rats, mice, rhesus monkeys. Most of the research looked into those, but basically every living organism, which is very interesting, I found, is when you introduce fasting or calorie restriction to it, lives for longer. And it's the only thing that causes that. The only mechanism. Calorie restriction is the only mechanism across the board. All living organisms will tend to live longer.
I wonder if it's you allow the opportunity to rest and recover. Like, you know how we rest and recover in the gym, our muscles?
Yeah.
Are we biologically allowing our cellular repair to also rest, recover, repair intercellularly, and then another chance to keep fighting again, because as a protective mechanism for our body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head, because one of the main processes that's studied, or everything encompasses one of the key factors, which is called autophagy. What autophagy is basically cellular recycling. It's a cellular recycling program which basically eliminates any dysfunctional organelles, proteins, or aggregates left in the cytoplasm of a cell. Basically anything that's going to hinder the cell's performance or overall integrity. Autophagy is a process that helps clear that out and make sure the cell's integrity is kept and the performance or the activity or functionality of the cell is premium. All right. And whenever we are fasting, that's almost, you can see it immediate time and time again, autophagy increases and shoots up. And there are different processes that occur that lead to that. And a lot of it is to do with giving your body rest, like you said, the cleansing of autophagy. But it's one of the factors that causes this or helps regulation execution of autophagy is the process of inhibiting mTOR, which we mentioned earlier, okay, which is an autophagy basically repressor, all right? So mTOR, I don't want people to think, mTOR is really bad for us, that we need to prevent mTOR. There are times it works in balance, okay, because what mTOR basically does, which is affected by nutrition or lack thereof, it promotes cell growth and proliferation, okay? Which is almost, if you think about it, when you're thinking about muscle growth, mTOR is required to be active in order for muscle growth to occur. Secondly, some particular aspects of cognition are improved with mTOR because it's to do with cell proliferation, whether it's stem cells or whatever it might be. mTOR helps promote that.
We wanted to promote the good stuff.
Exactly.
The good cells.
Yeah, it promotes. Yeah, you want it to promote the good cells.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes that's beyond our control because it's focusing. It promotes that through the synthesis of proteins, and depending on what those proteins do to our body, it can be detrimental because overactive or overactivity of mTOR can lead to uncontrolled cell proliferation, which is cancer. It can lead to reduced lifespan. It can lead to uncontrolled inflammation or oxidative stress. So, which there's a bit of a dilemma there because we know that suppressing mTOR is directly related or correlated with increased lifespan. But if you're looking for muscle growth at times or improved cognitive function, in some departments, you'll need mTOR to be doing its job. So it's important to not completely, a lot of the times you hear mTOR and people freak out, and nowadays you're hearing about it. It's just like, oh no, how do I suppress mTOR? So, there is good use for it, and there is bad use. So it just depends what processes and what types of proteins it's synthesizing.
Yeah. Just build all your muscle in your 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah.
And then fast from your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s so you can live a long life with all the muscle you've just made.
Exactly.
So build up that mTOR, muscle, brain health. Yep.
fast till
Do your academia, go through, get all your uni done, and then just fast.
It is fast. That's it. So it's important to mention that. I think we will talk about the contraindications, and depending on if you're a top athlete and what you need to focus on for those times, and whether fasting is right for you,
So,
and if
so
it's going
what
to stage of
happens
life.
to mTOR? Like if I, let's just say I'm going back through a strength cycle,
Yeah.
and I have like a lot more of the nutrition, like which is mainly protein and such calories. What happens to the mTOR?
It's still the main objective is cell proliferation and growth through protein synthesis. So when we are training and we're looking at muscle growth, mTOR is required along with so many other, I don't want to be too reductionist with this and thinking, pinning everything down to one particular group of proteins. So it's not just mTOR, there's so many, there's human growth factor, there's so many other things that are coming along, playing a factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, with performance, you can argue that mTOR is actually helping us in cell growth, and whether it's performance cognitively or performance physically.
Yeah, like energy production, muscle mass.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. But overturning that and constantly, it's interesting to put because whenever we have lots of nutrition or lots of calories, the body is essentially telling us that plentiful times are ahead of us.
Yes.
Okay, and mTOR protein senses this change and increases the working capacity and ATP production, which increases metabolism. Right? Sounds great, but not so great when it comes to longevity. Okay, metabolism. It's interesting. We talk about healthy metabolism and being quick. If metabolism is slow, it's better for us when it comes to longevity, all right?
Well, if yours was fast and mine was slow, and we're in the Waitakere Ranges going for a bushwalk, and we both broke our ankle, and we couldn't walk, you're going to die real quick.
That's it.
And then I'm going to have to drag your ass out of
That's
here.
it. Absolutely. Why are turtles so slow? And they're living till 100 and whatever,
Yeah, that's right. Giant tortoise, man.
And it's every single living organism. When you see, as you slow down metabolism, and fasting does this to us, calorie restriction does that to us, and which is something also to bear in mind and think about in terms of contraindications if you're wanting to come off fasting and get back to regular diets. Your metabolism's slow. Be careful. So if you end up, I'm going to stop fasting, I'm going to eat what I like, I'm going to go on holiday, not time for fast, chances are you might gain weight a lot faster because your calorie intake's increased and your metabolism's quite slow and basically efficient because metabolism doesn't care about weight loss. It cares about keeping this person alive. With this restriction of calories, how do I keep this person alive? I need to slow down and really think about where I'm going to use this ATP, this energy. So it's an important thing to mention.
That's why with when you do go through a fast, don't be surprised if you're not as fidgety, you don't move as much. And then if you go back into, if you went back into a calorie surplus, you notice you're fidgety, a lot of hand gestures, your legs may move, foot tapping happens a lot more.
Absolutely.
It's just natural.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of studies done on that as well. The other thing that helps promote, I guess, autophagy, or is helps with the regulation and activation of autophagy, is a number or a group of proteins called sirtuins, and there is so much research done on sirtuins and their effect on our longevity. And basically, as we grow older, our protein sirtuins degenerate and they're less proliferated within our body. Okay, but fasting has been shown to keep or sustain or preserve the health of these particular proteins. Okay, you might be thinking, what do sirtuins do? What they are, they play a huge role in sustaining genome integrity. Okay, so sustaining the health of our genes, the health, both responding to damaged DNA as well as repairing it. Crucial roles there. Modulating oxidative stress as well, and energy metabolism, or controlling that metabolism level we talked about, and brings it down and having a good control and where we spend our energies and where we use that. So there's another pathway we can see that fasting has helped us with helping the overall health of sirtuins, keeping them alive so that they can repair our DNA and overall integrity of our genomes for a prolonged amount of time.
I feel like sirtuins is like our internal Spartans.
Yeah.
Keeping our body in mint condition.
It really is.
Protecting us.
And it's all repair. And it's still, we're talking about autophagy. You're getting rid of all the waste products so that the cell can function and focus on its function and its integrity is left. If you were to ask me, if there was one Robin here and you were on a calorie-restricted diet 10 to 15% of your life, and another Robin who ate for maintenance or ate plentiful and happily ate without any focus, say you maintain similar weight, I won't say 9 times out of 10, I'll say 10 times out of 10, the Robin who is practicing fasting or having some form of calorie restriction will live longer.
I'll let you know at 112, eh?
Yeah. And that's the thing. The more research that comes out on this, we are seeing more people live beyond the 100. And yeah, what literature suggests and what many scientists and experts in the field suggest is that this is only going to get better and better not just because of what we found on fasting, but also in terms of nutrition, sleep, and the technology and medication and everything we have at our disposal now. Before you cut your hand and all of a sudden you're getting some sort of infection and you're dying. So times have changed a lot from what could kill us then to what's killing us now. So really, really interesting when it comes to longevity and the research on it when it comes to fasting. We'll move on from there and we'll talk a little bit about insulin levels and also reducing and losing weight in general. And that's the biggest reason people fast nowadays. They're not thinking
for the fat loss, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think about health, but they're not thinking, I need to increase my BDNF or I need to suppress production of mTOR or whatever it is, or maybe not even live longer. You never really hear that people wanting to live longer or something. They want to live a fulfilling life. They want to be healthy, but most of the time, people fast for fat loss.
Well, most of the people we come in contact with, that's their primary reason.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, I guess, if that's their true indication of why they want to do it, as their primary objective, that's good. As long as they are executing, because then all the factors that's already been indicated, all those benefits, they're also going to get that indirectly. So I guess as long as people know why they're doing it, they can stick to it, they're going to get all the other compounding positive effects from it.
Yeah,
which
absolutely. And the evidence is glaring when it comes to overweight, obese individuals practicing intermittent fasting or calorie restriction. They lose weight, and it's no surprise there. They're eating a lot less than how much they're burning, right? Yeah. And losing weight has huge positive changes to your health biomarkers. Whether we talked about reducing risk of inflammation and the epithelial lining becomes a lot healthier. You don't get any stenosis or thinning of blood vessels. Your brain function becomes better. Quality of life improves. Mental clarity. Everything across the board, you're going to be healthy. You're going to be lighter. You're going to be able to play with your kids and do all that sort of stuff. So, of course, your quality of life improves. So biomarkers in general, all across the board, improve. Insulin sensitivity increases with weight loss. And we've seen that time and time again. So reduced risk of diabetes, obesity, and all the health outcomes that come from that. So, really, really
only
important.
Positives.
Only positive. And fat burning, interesting studies done on visceral fat around the stomach and taking measurements of the waist or the stomach area. That is greatly reduced with fasting as well. And that comes with weight loss, obviously.
And that's the most important one when we're looking at health factors.
Absolutely.
Getting rid of all the fat around your endocrine system,
your
organs.
Exactly. Our second brain. So really, really important to mention there. The other thing is human growth factor. HGH levels are affected with fasting. Okay, human growth factor basically promotes muscle growth and increases fat burning and reduces adipose tissue in our system. That's one of the key functions of human growth factor, and important for that. But with fasting, it's said to increase the activity of human growth factor, which is interesting. It does that to an extent, and people. There is inconclusive evidence of HGH levels and longevity, and that some say HGH levels increase longevity, and other people say it does the complete opposite. So it's inclusive. But when it comes to muscle growth and fat burning, human growth
to be present.
Yeah, it needs to be present.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and fasting helps with that, which also makes sense because when you're in a calorie-restricted diet. You do something needs to happen to promote fat loss and increased muscle
and keep
growth.
all your muscle, yeah.
Exactly, just to be more functional, and it's I guess to do with adaptation of that metabolism. Where do we use the energy?
Yeah.
Where do we need to do? What do we need to do with it? So that becomes really, really important. Yeah.
So there's two ways now. Sleep, for you that don't know, is another way for human growth hormone to be increased.
Yeah.
It peaks actually in the morning. And then now fasting. So
Fasting.
there's two good methods you have now to help you burn more fat
Yeah.
and increase or sustain more muscle.
Yeah, doing it in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned it. A lot of people think about fasting. It's not, and we covered this earlier. It's not to do with completely being malnourished. Okay, there's a huge difference. Okay, I don't want to give any shout outs. They know who they are. MJ, no shout outs, but MJ coming to the gym with 22 hours of fasting and expecting to perform well optimally in a gym for strength training. And wondering, why can I not lift why can I not lift my phone off this desk?
Yep.
Yeah. No shout outs.
No.
But it's important, if you're doing fasting at that level, you got to make sure you're getting enough nutrients. Okay, the whole definition of fasting is absence of food, but not to the extent of malnutrition or malnourishment, and then you've got very, very adverse health effects happening there. Okay, you've got to give the system at least the bare minimum for it to function well. When you break your fast, you're not eating just anything. Make sure you're getting the right nutrients in. You're getting all the nutrients, correct amounts of macro and micronutrients in your diet. So bear that in mind. There is some research to do with, instead of calorie restriction, particular macronutrient restrictions. Okay, and there's good evidence with that. Like, for example, protein restriction. Okay, we need protein, especially essential amino acids. We need them for us to survive. Okay, but restricting those puts the body under stress. And when it does that, it affects or activates particular proteins like sirtuins to say these are desperate times. We need to be clever and we need to start repairing some of this DNA. We need to start activating particular processes so we can preserve what we have, because times are not plentiful. Okay, the brain's very clever with that, and these sirtuins and other different proteins pick up on that. So there's a lot of research to show even not cutting down completely, but holding off or fasting away from particular amino acids, essential amino acids, and then introducing them sparingly. The body makes the most out of them and activates particular genome repair and DNA repair and different cellular repairs like autophagy. So very interesting. And we will cover something what I like to call the stress theory as well a little bit later.
Yeah, I guess the key term that you just used there was to maintain.
Yeah.
So for people that are currently listening, remember you will maintain during a fasting state if you are like in terms of muscle mass or chronic calorie restrictions, you'll maintain the muscle mass, but you may not necessarily put on. So it's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
While you are going through a fasting process, don't be so tough on yourself if you're doing a 3 to 6 month strength cycle and you're not getting massive.
Yeah.
If that's not your goal, as Marvin and I already spoke about earlier on, don't be too concerned.
Absolutely.
This is just another strategy to help with your longevity.
Yeah, and that's absolutely something to bear in mind. And if it doesn't align with your goals, if you are an Olympic lifter, if you are a power lifter, or about to go
It's enough
into
about me.
Okay, let's ignore that.
No, what were you saying? So Olympic lifter, power lifter,
and your goal,
man.
your goal is you want to put on muscle mass. You want to promote muscle tissue healing after a strenuous workout. So limiting or giving your body the bare minimum is simply not enough. You kind of want mTOR to be active to help with cell growth and proliferation. You want all those things to help you out. Yes, it might not be the best for longevity at that point in time, but if that's your particular goal and that's what you're wanting to target, then that's what you do. You know, you need to. Times are plentiful. Give your body everything it needs to flourish in that particular sport or whatever it may be. So training is very, very important. You know, and if you're under stress and duress under a training period, you are going to start producing more cortisol in that training period. Your body's going to be more stressed, and it might break down. Furthermore, there's probably an increased risk of injury. I haven't looked at research specifically on that realm, but I can imagine if your body is not optimally nourished or at a thing, and you're performing at a very high level, some tendon, ligament, muscle might give way, or a joint might give way just because of whether it's lack of focus or lack of nourishment within that joint and collagen synthesis to do with your tendons and everything to do with those systematic processes. So really, really important to notice. If you're under controlled environment and you're training as a lifestyle, that would be fantastic and it would be fine. If you're competing for a particular goal or you're getting really competitive with your sport, then I would think twice about fasting, or I would do it sporadically, maybe in the
Do it in the off season.
yeah, doing it in the off season would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. The other thing is these are contraindications or big no's in terms of what we do not recommend. Okay, and that is fasting when if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Okay, again, you're feeding too. It's not just you, and it's a time of growth. Really, really important. And it's not the time to slow your metabolism and turn off all those factors. You need to provide you and the baby who's growing inside you or the baby you are breastfeeding with all the nutrients possible. Okay, so that's a big no. Don't do it if you have a friend or who's getting that. You hear it sometimes. Once a mother has given birth, the first objective is I need to lose this fat. I do whatever it takes, and I'm not going to eat this and that. Maybe think twice about that, and don't be so selfish. I think
Be selfish. Eat.
Yeah, be selfish for you and for your baby.
Yeah.
So that's a big no-no. Furthermore, adding on top of that, kids and teenagers. Okay, your body's still growing. Your brain is still developing, and depriving it. There's plenty of evidence to just depriving it of those. You're going to get issues with growth. You're not growing physically to your potential, and as well as mentally and cognitively to your potential as well. So fasting for kids and teenagers is not recommended. Okay. Same goes with people dealing with any sort of eating disorders.
Yeah.
Again, that's a no-no. Okay, so yeah, if you feel like it might become something, or you've had history of eating disorders or issues with completely restricting yourself from food and nutrients and calories, then it's something you need to.
It may act as a trigger.
It may act as a trigger.
You don't want to be restrictive, and then historically, if you've been bulimic, You don't want to eat copious amounts of food if you wanted to do, like, let's just say, an 8 and 16.
Yeah.
Because then it may end up purging. Marvin and I always advocate that you seek a professional, someone that you can talk to about it, and then maybe once you feel like you're on top of it with tools and strategies that will help, then potentially. But
Absolutely.
just, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bear that in mind. And we also covered metabolism, and that's really, really important. When you actually initiate fasting, it's a funny little curve, and some research suggests metabolism increases for a short period of time before it dips down and plummets below to where it was, and it stays down and slows down in terms of chronic. But bear that in mind if you are doing a challenge, whether you're with friends and family, or you yourself thinking about doing a fasting challenge or a calorie restriction challenge, which there's so many out there now, and you see it time and time again in the clinic.
Yeah.
Your metabolism does not care about weight loss. All it's focusing on is, how do I keep this guy alive with the amount of nutrients they are consuming? That's the main point of focus. So it becomes very, very efficient with the production of ATP, where the energy is going to be put, what bodily functions are essential and what are not, and we're going to focus on those. So when you hop out of that, say you're on a calorie-restricted diet and you're 1,600 and you're like, 6-week challenge is over, I'm back to 2,500, you will gain weight faster than anybody's gained weight before.
Yeah.
Okay, faster than you ever gained it, and you will overshoot. Majority of the time, people will overshoot because it takes a bit of time for the feedback loop to occur and then the metabolism to come back up. Okay, so calories go up and then metabolism's playing catch up, and it takes a while for it to come back up.
That's why they cancelled The Greatest Loser for that reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because what they were doing is they would drop, let's just say, it was an American show, 7.2 pounds within the week as an example. And these people were getting tremendous weight/fat loss from high amounts of output, and they were in a calorie deficit. So what we're sort of talking about here, not so much fasting, but still in calorie restriction. And people were actually putting it back on. There was no precise number, but a lot were putting on 10 to 15% more than what they had gone into the show with. So they actually had to abandon the show because it wasn't actually educating people on reverse dieting. So how to come out of the calorie restrictions.
Yeah.
So,
which is so important. And we do recommend you to reverse diet, or like anything, if you're on heavy medication, snapping off that medication immediately, day dot, not looking at anyone in particular, that's going to have significant effect on your body, because your body is all about adaptation. Okay. It's all about adaptation, and it will continuously adapt to what you give it and what you feed it. So when you hop out of it, and we do this when I worked in hospital as well, when we wean out of medication, whatever it may be, we've got to be very, very careful and bring that back. So if you're on 1,600, you got to come up by 150, maybe 150 calories every week, 7 to 10 days. Ramp it up, nice and controlled manner. That gives your metabolism some time to be like, oh, hang on, times are becoming a little bit more plentiful, and I can actually speed up. So I've got more ATP to use. I can put it into different functions, and then we'll catch up on that. Okay, so important to note, coming off diet, keep an eye and be careful. Coming off fasting, sorry. In addition, that you already mentioned before, can lose muscle mass. Yeah. Over the fasting period. Yeah. I haven't read anything on, or have you, about how long can you fast for before you're actually seeing muscle loss take effect? Well, I haven't seen any. I think clear it will indications. I'm not too sure, but I think it will depend on the extent of fasting. We've done, and it's to do with calorie restriction. I think if you are fasting quite dramatically, and if you're giving yourself a 4-hour window, for example, with intermittent fasting, you're doing a 24, something extreme, or day on or day off, you might be restricting yourself with quite a lot of calories. So the heavier the cut you do away from your maintenance, the more muscle mass we will lose. And we when we are helping people reduce their calories, we say sometimes there's a rule of thumb. If we even do a minimal cut, around 65% of your body weight loss will likely to be fat loss, and the other 35 is likely to be lean body mass. Part of that is muscle mass. And that's a very slight cut, a very gradual cut. If as you increase that cut and make it heavier, chances are that ratio evens out a little bit more. You're losing more muscle mass. So bear that in mind. It's definitely something important to keep in mind. So
that's why you want to do your cuts slowly.
Yeah. That's exactly if we are talking about cuts. And I think it's important to mention with fasting as well, you're not completely obliterating your system. You're still giving it the nutrients it requires, but at a slight restriction of what the calories are required to keep your bodily functions and maintenance.
And we can't test our 1 rep max during our fasting. Fasting states, can we? Which people may or may not do. I'm not too sure, but obviously it's going to hit a huge detriment to your neural connectivity to optimize your strength and performance. So make sure you're not going to do any tests. Like let's say example, if you're a policeman and you want to, or going for a police testing, and you've got to do like a lot of physical work, including like your strength-based testing, just make sure you're not fasting around those specific periods. I would advise to people.
It's a tough one. I mean, if you have eaten 3-4 hours before, you might be okay. And we see it with a lot of professionals. We see with football professionals, Muslims. Mohamed Salah for Liverpool, for example, for a footballer who's a Muslim, and he practices when Ramadan comes, he fasts. And some games fall into that fasting period, obviously. So you see them.
You wouldn't be able to do like power testing though.
Yeah, won't be able. And performance is you can argue that performance can be hindered, or they might not be in full throttle, but they might be, spiritual faith might actually push them in other realms as well and make them perform. But you see sportsmen, Muslims coming in as soon as it's a break of dawn or sunset during a game, you'll see them going to the touchline and having a few dates or some food just to replenish the system and heading back into the field. So you have seen that before. It's not a complete be careful, but it is likely, especially done chronically, it will hinder your performance. Definitely, most definitely. So it's something to keep in mind. I think we've covered most of the contraindications and things to bear in mind, I guess. And the key things is around eating disorders, kids, as well as pregnant mothers or breastfeeding mothers. Yeah,
I think fasting would be just a good tool to utilize throughout someone's life, sporadically, to help with that longevity. And then I think it's just being smart with using that tool, right?
100%.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. That's what fasting is utilized for.
Yeah. So super useful tool to look at overall health, like we mentioned, and then longevity. Really useful. And we will close on this stress theory, which seems to be, you see it in different realms, in different aspects. When we put the body under duress or under stress, whether it's restriction of calories,
restriction about marriage.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm peaking. I'm good.
Marriage and studies. That's what we're talking about. But no, I'm talking about things like diet. If you're nutrient or calorie restricted yourself, and making the body feel that times it's tough times ahead, and we need to really focus about repairing what we do have, and that seems to have great benefits to our systems. The same with exercise. Exercise is causing damage to the body, putting the body under stress, making your heart beat faster, making you sweat. All those have huge benefits, and it's putting the body, it's the reverse of, you're putting the body under great stress and you're reaping the rewards of that. We've seen huge evidence to do with ice baths. No one likes or enjoys, or the body is triggered when you jump into an ice bath, but there's huge It's like a stress response. We look at it throughout the body, everywhere. All the cells react positively to that and overcome, whether it's mental, physical, whatever it may be. Same thing with saunas or hot temperatures and being in that realm. It's causing stress to the body that is giving you many, many benefits and overall benefits and lifespan and longevity. So the same goes with fasting. It falls into that stress theory paradigm where it's causing stress, good type of stress to the body, and helping the body adapt and get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just got it just made me think about, I've done both at the same time where I've fasted in extreme heat conditions.
Oh, man.
So I've sort of ticked, I did the diet, I did the exercise and the sauna.
Yeah.
When I walked/ran around the entire island of Niue.
That's got to be... That's
in one day.
And you fasted that day too.
Yeah, because I didn't take enough food. So I would have been in huge deficit. I would have had like 300 or 400 calories.
Yeah.
And a few of them were made up of ice blocks that my family had to bring around. But that
would have been...
That's why I'm 86 years of age and I look 37. Because of that one event.
One event. Oh my God. But yeah, no, it's put your body under stress, exercise. And obviously in some other paradigms, lack of sleep and causing that sort of stress is not good. Heavy stress in terms of lifestyle is not good either. But specific things when you're causing your body, putting it under stress with exercise and nutrition is
micro stresses is fine.
Yeah,
not
and
chronic stresses.
causing big benefits to your whole
so
body.
try fasting.
Yeah.
If it's appropriate for you, and use it as a tool.
Yeah, and if you're not sure, consult a professional, a health professional about fasting, and start small and see how you feel. It's generally a very safe thing to do if it's a controlled environment. Start trying it and putting it into your lifestyle or certain periods of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Happy fasting.
Happy fasting, and I know it's a little bit early, but happy Ramadan to all our Muslim friends and viewers.
All right, take it easy.
Peace out.
Peace.
Take it easy, bro.
Bye.